Hey everybody, welcome back to New Life Church's Life Group Training Sessions, where our goal is to empower and equip you to have the best life group ever. My name's Kurt, I'm one of the staff here at New Life Church, and today what I want to share with you will not only help you as a life group leader, but it'll help you in your family and also in your workplace. Today I want to talk to you about high stakes conversations. High stake conversations are where the outcomes matter to us and the other person. It's oftentimes where a conversation where opinions differ and stakes are high and emotions run strong. So some examples of that might be when a boss gives you an unfavorable performance review, or maybe a spouse is addressing a lack of intimacy in the marriage, or siblings negotiating the terms of an inheritance, or a parent dealing with a rebellious teen, or maybe someone in your life group who's breaking the flow of your life group constantly, or maybe someone in your life group who's sharing too much and too often. The outcomes of such conversations can have an oversized impact on the quality of our lives. These conversations, you need to have them, but honestly, you don't want to have them. We often want the clarity those conversations will bring, but not the conversation itself. Now, over the years, I personally have been involved in many high-stakes conversations when leading staff and volunteers, or even with my own family. I would love to tell you that I've mastered this and that all those conversations turned out wonderfully, but that's not always the case. So today, I'd love to teach you some of what I've been learning that have been helpful along in my journey. The truth is that most of us feel a sense of anxiety, stress, and worry when we're about to have a high-stakes conversation, because the relationship with the other person, they matter to us, and the outcomes and the results, those deeply matter to us. So you really have three options whenever you're coming up to a high stakes conversation. Number one, you can ignore it, but that doesn't work. It always ends up coming back up. Number two, you can have the conversation, but sometimes we do it and we do it poorly and it hurts people. I once heard it said that speak when you're angry and you will make the best speech you will ever regret. Or you can just have the conversation where the relationship flourishes. Yes, guys, that can happen. So why do conversations matter? Harvard did a study over multiple generations. They call it the Good Life Study. It was over 85 years, included over 1,200 people. And what mattered most to longevity? It wasn't diet, it wasn't exercise or stretching or vacations or hobbies or other things that we might associate to longevity. What they found that the key to a long life and longevity is healthy, life-giving relationships. They keep us healthier and happier, and we live longer lives. So that means that the quality of our conversations determine the quality of our relationships, which determine the quality of our life and longevity. But let's be honest, the higher the stakes in the conversation, the more anxiety we experience and feel. Again, you can tell it's a high stakes conversation when you see these three things. Number one, opposing opinions, strong emotions, and high stake issues where the outcomes matter. This is actually known as the Crucial Conversations Triangle. It's actually from the book, Crucial Conversations, which is really a great book to read no matter who you are or no matter what you do. I would encourage you to read it. Jesus doesn't care about many of the things that stop us from having these conversations. We're often afraid to have them, but he was bold. We're often fearful that we'll hurt someone or that they'll reject us or what we're saying. But Jesus, he was direct, but he was also full of grace and full of truth. Jesus cared so much about people that he wouldn't let anything stand in the way of their freedom. Jesus was a master at asking great questions. Jesus knew all the answers to every question in the room, but he hardly ever just said it. Instead, he would ask a question that would lead someone to a place of self-reflection and realization, or that would lead them to a deeper truth. Think of Jesus at the woman at the well. He asks her about her husband, and then he reveals that she's had multiple different husbands, and he leans in with compassion. Jesus tells her that the wells that she had been drinking from, that they're ultimately going to leave her empty. That all those relationships, I can just imagine him saying to her in that moment, you've drawn your worth from a lot of these different wells, from these men that you've had relationships with, but they've all left you thirsty. All these relationships haven't given you what they promised. And so he kind of almost says to her, how's that working for you? And then he goes on to say, the water I will give you, it's going to rise up and give you peace and harmony with God. It's going to give you the peace and harmony that you want in your soul. That one conversation changed the entire trajectory of that woman's life. Her life was forever changed, and so can those that you need to have a high-stakes conversation with. Their freedom could be waiting on the other side of whatever's holding you back from having that conversation. Remember, we have these conversations not because we need to get something off our chest or because we want to remove awkward situations, but because we care about that person so much that we don't want to allow there to be anything that holds them back. The most skilled people that I know at having high-stake conversations are people who usually ask great questions. But there's other skills they have it as well. So let's look at some of those things. Now, one quick side note before we jump into some of those things. If you need to have a high-stakes conversation with a person, never do it over text message. Rarely do it over phone. In person is always the best, and here's why. There's this doctor named Albert Maharabins. I don't know fully if I'm saying his name right, but he was a world famous professor of psychology. And in his studies, what he found was some amazing insights and findings. He was best known for his research on the importance of verbal and nonverbal messages, meaning when a person is speaking to us, how is it that we understand them and receive them? And what forms of communication speak actually most to us as individuals? And in his research, what he found was known as the 7-38-55 rule. 7-38-55 rule. Have you ever heard of this? What he said in this 7-38-55 rule is that these are the elements of personal communication. So if you think of a way that someone experiences you in a conversation as 100%, maybe it's broken into a pie chart. Here's what the research found, that 7% is actually the words that are spoken. 38% is the tone of voice that we use, and 55% is the body language and the posture that we communicate with. When dealing with high stakes conversation, body language and tone of voice makes the biggest difference, not necessarily the words that are said. See, conversations are like a puzzle that you keep trying to fit all the pieces together to make something that is clear and understandable and helpful and beautiful. So here's one helpful tool that I've learned to have a difficult conversation. It's these letters OIC or OIC. OIC stands for this: observation, interpretation, and clarification. Observation. With observation, you're staying away from accusations or questioning the other person's motive. This step is about just stating the facts of the situation from your experience of what you're aware of. It is an honest, straightforward, non-threatening, because you're just merely telling the other person what was heard, what was seen, and what was experienced. So I always like to start with a question when I ask a person is this: would you give me permission to make an observation? And then simply lay out the facts of what happened or what you are aware of. It's not a judgment or an assessment or a conclusion. It's just simply laying out the aspects of what's known. Also, the next thing is asking a question is always easier as an on-ramp into a conversation rather than just powering up with an attitude of saying, we need to talk. Because we all love when people do that to us. That's one of the worst things you can do to me is come up to me, I need to talk to you about something. Man, I just sit with anxiety until we have that conversation. So the next thing that we want to look at in OIC is the I, and the I stands for interpretation. In this step, you're giving your take on the situation and your thoughts as to why you think the events or responses of why things might have unfolded the way they did. Now in this, you're giving a few possible interpretations. It's wise to give careful thought to how you talk about your reasons, because your ultimate goal should be to advance healing and to advance the relationship, to make it stronger and not to wreck it because of something you said while being emotionally revved up. So I find it helpful to give 2 or 3 interpretations of why it could have been or why this could have happened. Now, when you give the third interpretation, I would recommend that this is the interpretation where you give them the benefit of the doubt. Understanding you may not have all the facts. This helps calm them down and relax and tells them that you may not have all the understanding that you need or understand all the small nuances that might have happened, why things led to the way they happened. This communicates that you're looking to learn and that you're open to seeing other ideas and that you really want to understand, but that you also care. Adding this one thing shows humility and deference towards the other person. And humility is vital for these types of conversations because without it, the other person may feel backed into a corner and go into fight or flight. going on the defensive or the offensive with you. And when that happens and something goes into fight or flight, the conversation has come to a screeching stop and will no longer be productive or helpful. So don't go around this step. Here's an example of how to offer these interpretations. You could say to someone, so when that happened, it made me think, and then offer one or two of your interpretations. But then maybe the third one is, but I realize I might not have all of the facts. I could be way off on that. A statement like this helps move the conversation forward in a productive manner because I've left it open that I could be wrong in my perspective as to what happened. In other words, I care about them. I'm valuing that other person's perspective. Now, the last step in OIC is the C stands for clarification. In this step, we're asking, can you clarify for me what it is? Of those three things that you just gave them the option of what three of those interpretations could have been, you're just saying, why did this happen? Or which of these interpretations is right? Now, in this last step, you really aim to make the other person's response important in how you perceive them. By doing this, you're pivoting away from accusation to actual conversation. People shut down when they feel accused or attacked. And the accusation can crush a productive conversation. Whereas a conversation is really a two-way dialogue where we're both sharing information to come to the right conclusions together. Now, here's the way you could say something like this. I have some thoughts on what happened, but are any of my interpretations correct? Can you clarify in helping me understand the truth in this? With this, you're telling the other person that you value their opinion, that you want to hear it, and they are open to changing your mind in how you perceive them or this situation. Let's say you're in a life group and one of the people there who attended, let's just call him Carl. Let's say Carl makes a comment after someone shares that you perceive as being sarcastic or derailing to the conversation that you're having within your group. So you decide after the group, I'm gonna approach Carl one-on-one after the meeting. And so here's how a conversation like this could actually look using OIC, or observation, interpretation, and clarification. So, Hey Carl, could I ask you something about something you shared in life group? He says, sure. So you could then say, when I asked that question about where God was challenging you, and Zoe shared, I noticed that you said this comment, and I might not have got the words right on this, but wow, that sounds like a tough life. First world problems, am I right? And you hit the person next to you, and then you laughed. When you said that, a few thoughts came to mind. Perhaps you were not aware of what's going on in Zoe's situation, or maybe you were not in agreement that Zoe's response was valid, or maybe I'm way off in what I saw, and maybe something totally completely different. Could you clarify for me which of these are true, so I know best how to process this? I want you to know I value our relationship, our life group, and I really value Zoe as well. And I always want to give you the benefit of the doubt. So then depending on how Carl's responds, that will determine how you respond next. If he says, I didn't mean anything by it, I was just playing around, can't you take a joke? My response would be, you and I both know that the goal of our life group is to grow closer together, towards each other and towards God. And I feel that your comment tonight might have made others less likely to share, or maybe even cause people to withdraw. I know that you care about Zoe as a member of this group and that you would never want to hurt her. I think that tonight when you said that, it might have impacted her in your relationship more than you perceived. I would encourage you to go connect with her and maybe consider apologizing. Or if he says, now that you share that with me, I recognize that me saying that could have really hurt Zoe. My response would be, is there a next step that I can help support you in taking? Here's one of the things you guys need to know as leaders of your group. The kindest form of leadership is telling people the truth in love. But we also have to be wise when having high stakes conversations. And so 2 great books to go deeper on this topic. Number 1 is the book Crucial Conversations. It's a fantastic book. Also, the next book is called Thanks for the Feedback. It's by Sheila Heen and a few other authors. It is a fantastic book. Plus, you'll find in the description below some verses about conflict and communication. You guys, I just want to thank you so much for joining us here today. I know that this is a difficult topic to talk about. We're going to have even more videos about the topic of having difficult conversations. If you found this video helpful, or if you want more training on difficult conversations, I want to encourage you to check out some of our other life group training sessions. So guys, have a great day. We will see you next time.